business leaders, distinguished policymakers and CTI colleagues, and ladies and gentlemen, I am extremely honored to be invited here and make a few remarks on T-Mobile's views on this industry and our leadership in it. And I'll start by asking a question, actually. What is really a technology disruption? A technology disruption, I would suggest, is when an entire ecosystem of suppliers, vendors, participants, technology researchers, etc., flip over their research and focus and work towards a new technology. And I would argue that that's very much what happened when 5G came about. It created a technology disruption to the mobile industry. We were used to those disruptions because they happen every 10 years or so. But that is a wave of change. And you have a chance to catch the wave, or you could let the wave just roll by. But here in the US, in our industry in America, we caught it. And did we catch it? We had caught 4G somewhat, but 5G is when we really caught it. And we rode it to full length. And today we are champions in the world of 5G, and it's extremely beneficial to our economy, to what we're doing. Many speakers before me have bear witness of that here today. But with about $200 billion invested, we have reached a point where we have almost 70% of 5G availability, measured by Ookla, who does all these. That's when you do the speed test and you get all this data. But they are measuring a very high availability, which is about twice as high as anyone else in the world, because we have built amazing networks over a very, very large geography. And we're providing services where about 90% of the population is covered with mid-band. And from the beginning, we realized that the opportunity here was to get mid-band combined with 5G, to build this ecosystem with low and mid-band connectivity across. Why? Because we could make full use of the depth and the breadth that 5G provides in terms of combining carriers over a large area. The mid-band provides us with that depth that gives us completely new speed levels, taking us about 10 times higher than previous generations have been able to do. And we were able to get a very, very high penetration in this country. If we look at the mid-band, just the mid-band as such, if you exclude China, China has about 95% of their population covered with mid-band, which is a little bit higher than the US, but almost the same. If you look at the rest of the world, and guess, 30% on the mid-band. Not yet at all on that strategy and that big success factor that we have been able to create. We have the 5G penetration in the country is about 72% as it stands right now, which is also highest in the world. Because the adoption rate of devices, we're able to flip spectrum over from LTE previous more and more into 5G, creating this positive circle of growth on 5G that we have. What would this be without looking at one of the most important use cases, our fixed wireless access success in North America? And I do know from Mobile World Congress this year in Barcelona that everybody is talking about what's happening here. We're able to create a completely new service based on disrupting what is in many countries, and no exception here, almost oligopolies among fixed players that are supplying this type of access to homes. But it also provides us with a platform for a much more differentiated experience. Homes and businesses are full of screens and computers of different sizes and forms, not the least the mobile phone itself. And we are able to address all that with this fixed wireless access, which gives us an opportunity to differentiate services much more in a space where pricing, etc., was set on an oligopoly basis. A very disruptive service. Fixed wireless access in the US is now up to 60% coverage, which is amazing. 80% adoption is a weird measurement, but it really shows how much of it is 5G. There is still some LTE stuff out there, but it's flipping over to 5G, almost all of it. We were at the end of the last year able to reach 8 million subscribers on fixed wireless access, and it keeps growing. And I couldn't help to throw in a little T-Mobile number there so you can see what part we are doing with it. We're partly pioneering this, but we're also helping the whole ecosystem to move along with this type of service. This puts us and the United States in a technology leadership position. So, another question, what is technology leadership? Used by so many, talked about so much, but what is it really? It's when that entire ecosystem that I spoke about before, when the technology disruption happens, flip over to a new technology, those roadmaps that are being carved out and created by every vendor, every supplier, every chip maker, every software company creates leadership based on research, leadership based on the latest and greatest that can be brought forward on technology because the market economy makes that happen. Makes everybody compete in a playing field. And it's important because it's connected to our championship position here in the US on 5G. It is our nation, it's our networks, it's what we build and put out there that is driving that ecosystem of global suppliers to fit into what we're doing. And that's the remarks that was made previously by NTIA and Alan. It's so important to bring that into America, into our country, on any level that it is, from chip all the way up the stack, we need to be able to do it. Today, we have carrier aggregation with 4 carriers in the downlink, 2 carriers in the uplink. This may be just technology to you, but it's years of research all the way through of how those radios are built and chipsets are built that makes those technologies being able to be deployed, especially here now in our networks. All of that work, including massive MIMO, multi-user MIMO, distributed MIMO, makes the best possible care of those radio frequencies that are licensed out in the access networks. And I would easily argue that there is no other industry on the planet that puts so many dollars behind making the best possible use of that spectrum as the wireless industry does. And it's by far. We have the standalone networks. That's our core and the evolution of the core. Also there, massive amount of technology research and activities goes into building that. But the standalone core, a unique feature of 5G, also comes with something else. It comes with the ability to create APIs and open up those core networks for programmability by others, by other industries out there. And thus, 5G becomes the answer to the innovation platform that we have been looking for in the wireless industry for so many years. We're just in its infancy here, but it's really happening, and it's a very, very promising future. The programmable network is what creates those slices that are so popularly talked about. The programmable network is where differentiated services can be happening over the network. And why it's really so important in 5G is because the original vision, and I was there in a previous capacity to create the original vision of 5G. And the original vision was that one network and multiple services. And that vision is what we're doing and creating in this ecosystem today, here in the US and leading. I'll just give a couple of examples so we make it more tangible. We just recently deployed a 5G advanced system, private network type style, hybrid because we can use the macro network as well, in a hospital environment. We were able to make sure that every device in the hospital, every tablet were used by staff, every phone was on a secure line, thanks to network slicing. Same time, we could provide full service to anyone in the hospital wanting to make phone calls. We could provide IoT services for tracking and tracing equipment in the hospital environment. And we were experimenting with making sure that care could be given in an ambulance already on its way into hospital, transmitting X-rays over a secure slice that would survive even congestion, and making sure that this service can be provided. That is 5G in a nutshell. It's multiple services over one network. We did in entertainment, maybe someone noticed, in Las Vegas there was a Formula One race. That Formula One race, we provided service to race teams, to spectators, to points of sales, to others that were there. And why it was so significant is because points of sales is just selling a t-shirt or a beer or something somewhere, or an in-passing spectator. And those don't use much data, but when they do, they need to go through. And on the other side, you have all the audience, about 30,000 from each operator, let's say, and 100,000 spectators every night in Las Vegas for the race, using an app, monitoring their favorite drivers, and wanting all that data instantly, especially at the start of the race. But still the same point of sales need to work at the same time. So network slicing is really a technology that is there to secure a customer experience. It's a customer experience focus. And nothing is better than the last example I brought here, which is security. We created a network slice for security. It's a slice based on security as a service. And what we use is the SIM card in the phone to authenticate the transaction and making sure it's like a VPN over 5G. Doesn't consume any bandwidth, but it's still a network slice. It's a programmability of the network, all the way from a piece of software in a cloud somewhere out to a device somewhere across the network, securing that customer experience. 5G is a technology that's just in its infancy of innovation. As I described before, there are now multiple devices coming out being 5G supported. Anything from IoT, fixed wireless devices, or devices on the mobile phones. AI is coming on top of all those, apart from all the applications that are being possible. You can imagine multiple effects of multiple devices. All those devices with its own multiples of applications, and then superpowered by AI strategies on top of it. It creates such massive innovation. But in the core of all this is one network with multiple services. The regulatory environment and the environment we need to create, and many speakers before me has alluded to these, but I will just again repeat it. Spectrum, auction authority can be fixed by Congress and needs to do so. And we need a much bigger spectrum pipeline coming in. 2027, China, 4 times more spectrum, US, more alarming signals. And we have a growth of traffic. Remember I told you, highest penetration in the world already. The highest penetration with new services is squeezing operators in this country for spectrum. We really need it to be able to continue to fuel the increasingly wireless economy. The regulation of our industry should be light touch and allow for innovation. I described before the innovation of slicing, the innovation of new services, the innovation that can happen because so many devices, so many softwares are being used to develop new use cases in 5G. The supply chain, but the supply chain is a broad term. It goes all the way back to chipsets for RF, chipsets for computing, all those software stacks built on top of it, a lot of innovation, and that goes back to research. And it was called earlier that we need a bigger engagement from an RF community in the US, and we certainly do. But a lot of this goes back to mathematics, algorithms, development in our universities, and support of research on a national agenda. And we need that in this industry to be able to keep that leadership all the way through supply chains and into new services. I'll just comment briefly on O-RAN because it's such a great example of where we have embraced this. We're starting to see prototyping with the Department of Defense and others who are working on this, bringing this technology to life. In the procurement, we need standards. That's how procurement works. We need standards to be able to procure this. And those standards can be set right here as we are creating this ecosystem. And we need the research. It's such a great example, such a great opportunity for America to lead. But I will say it's only one piece. I brought up earlier the whole radio access space, the core space, and the future programmable networks, and how that all intersects. O-RAN has another important meaning, and that is that it's the intersection between edge computing capabilities, which will be closely related to all these AI cases that will come in industry after industry after industry out there. I believe that wireless has a big role to play also in AI support of future devices, more than just our own usage of it, because we can tune our networks with it, and we can tune our algorithms and tune the way we treat customers with AI. I will just end up on an AI-generated image. As you can see, I didn't draw this myself. I've checked with the IPR. There's no IPR in AI because nobody knows where this really comes from. You can write a new prompt yourself and get anything out of it using one of these LLM machines. But what I wrote here is a prompt about ubiquitous wireless being out there, one network, supporting multiple services, giving opportunity for growth, economic growth, and supporting a capability for America to continue to lead and extend our lead in wireless. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention.